So the larger vision has always been to go into spaces that are ignored and come up with scalable solutions. At some point, we felt like heritage was space that was really needing attention. While we inherit a cultural heritage, we are also inheriting a natural heritage, which is our forests, our trees, the whole meaning of biodiversity, and bringing our storytelling out with that. Our target audience was children and then moved to adults. Even if I move the needle a little bit, it's better than not moving it and sitting out there and saying, oh, the system is broken. PowerPoint presentations and want to see numbers. But if you're investing somewhere, go and just interact with the people on the ground.
On this episode, we're in conversation with Radha Goenka. Radha is the young leader, driving force behind the RPG Foundation. She kicked off her endeavors with Pehlay Akshar and has moved on also to make impact, whether it's in the field of women empowerment, with the women community in Kodiwara, or whether it's in environmental preservation, heritage preservation, and lots more. So let's dive right in. We've got loads to discuss with Radha Goenka.
Hi, I'm Radha Goenka. I'm the director at RPG Foundation, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation with Aabha today.
Radha, great to have you with us here on Ladies Who Lead. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Aabha, for inviting me.
So I want to dive in because I know that there is so much to discuss with you. The enormous work that you're doing, that you have been doing actually for the last 10, 15 years now. So it's not overnight. I think today some of it seems, very glamorous, even though social work is not. But you have made it so in terms of the kind of partnerships you're attracting, the kind of capital you're attracting, dedicated to improving the ecosystem to some of these communities. But, you started with education, and I think that's where your passion lay. So talk to us about how you got into this space and really what was your initial desire, what you wanted to achieve at first.
So thank you for the intro. And before I start, I have to say I never think of my work as being glamorous. I don't intend it to be glamorous, but I definitely enjoy what I do. And the journey has been started in 2008, and I was in this privileged position where I had education and I had funding, and I had to think about how I can make a difference. The way I saw the social sector then is that there were areas that were clearly ignored in society for various reasons. So we said, let's go into spaces that are high in need in terms of need in society, that are ignored, and then we try to come up with innovative ways to solve those problems. And we're very conscious to build scalable models, because if we had to solve for the larger issues, we are a large country, we have a billion plus people living in it, that we had to build scalable models. The first space was education. In 2008 is when we started with a program under the foundation called Pehlay Akshar. Today it's an independent NGO. We picked English particularly because that was a time when RTE, the Right to Education, was launched, and a lot of people were leaving government schools, joining private schools to learn English. RTE really helped to bring our kids back to the government system, but we weren't solving for the problem that English was a high need, it was an enabler, we weren't teaching it in our schools. So we came up with a program where we were teaching functional English, which is basic English, which is based on ESL, English as a second language globally practiced, and devise our own curriculum. In 6 years, a child would go through the program and learn English. Cut to where it is today, we've scaled up. We've been in partnership with BMC for 10 plus years. We're now training all the BMC teachers with our curriculum and ideology. We have a huge digital footprint that started in COVID. We have a large digital library. So that's how it started.
Fantastic. So I want to focus on this a bit before we get to your other project. Otherwise, she's going to steamroll through all of them. See, you actually traversed the entrepreneurial journey. You may well have had the funding, but you still had to start from scratch. And in that sense, you're first gen, definitively. So talk to us about, what really were the challenges you had. You also must have had challenges. I mean, this space is not easy for anybody, even if you have, a lot of support behind you. What were some of those early kind of speed bumps, so to say, or just learnings? Some of them may be continuing. And for you, because you were fairly young at the time, you're still young. So, I mean, at that time, they must have seen you as a newbie in the space. What were you up against?
It was tough. I have to say that it was tough, but I learned a lot. When we started on this journey of giving, it was back in 2008. This is pre the 2% CSR law, which is now very much in use, and every company is now giving, with CSR money. But this was before that. So I had to really convince the CEOs of the various companies to actually give back, to more strategic giving. So I have to say, giving was always part of our DNA, and I think generationally the family's been doing a lot of charity. But a lot of the thinking, that was there was that if my right hand gives something, my left hand shouldn't know about it. So you give back, but you don't talk about it. You kind of do it discreetly. So to kind of convince them that, let's, give in a more strategic way where, you're measuring your impact, was something that took some convincing to do on our part, on my part. But like I said, I feel like, I don't view it as a negative because, that journey only got us to become more organized at our end. Even though my first initiative was Pehlay Akshar and it started as a program under the foundation. Today, when we are an independent NGO and are getting funding from outsiders, we already have the groundwork done of monitoring our program regularly, of having the right kind of practices in place.
Yes.
So
And you said, Pehlay Akshar, you started with just yourself and one other girl.
yes,
And today you are a team of over 100.
yes,
That's enormous. Congratulations. And we've been hearing about all the wonderful work that you all have been doing. And I want to get deeper into that because you spoke about a digital footprint, number of schools, programs, so on. Give us a sense of the, size and breadth of really what you've achieved here.
So Pehlay Akshar is a functional English program where we're teaching English. When we started, we created our own curriculum, which I think is a huge USP of the program because we've designed the curriculum based on ESL, which is English as a second language, which is globally practiced. So if you go to a Spanish country, they will teach English with ESL philosophies in mind because the primary language of the population is Spanish. In India, we felt when we looked at the curriculum that we were focusing on a lot of nomenclature. Like we will teach a child that this is an adverb or this is an adjective, which you don't really need to know, but you need to learn how to use it. So we call it a functional English curriculum where we're teaching basic reading and speaking skills. And in 6 years, we were able to move a child from not speaking English to speaking and reading in English. We, of course, evolved the program because we were working closely with BMC and they said that, we have a state curriculum. So we also got our teachers to teach the state books that were there. And we found in our impact studies that we still achieved the same results. So that's when we thought that it's not just what we're teaching, but the how. That got distilled into a training program. And today we're training all of BMC, in our curriculum, in our ideology. We also have a huge digital footprint, which actually came about during COVID. And, we got our teachers to shoot in front of a camera. And we then put the entire library not only on YouTube, but also on Doordarshan. And it became one of the highest watched shows.
Lovely.
So now we're at this point where we're looking at next steps of how we can scale this program to beyond Bombay.
Fantastic. I think that would be amazing. I think it's a big need as well, a big space in India to tap. And I think education is so critical, at this point in terms of development, in our country as well. So anyone I think that's looking to forward this agenda, it's going to be super, super useful and beneficial to everybody. Then what led you to launch some of the other consecutive projects that you're now involved in?
So the larger vision has always been to go into spaces that are ignored and come up with scalable solutions. At some point, we felt like heritage was space that was really needing attention. A lot of our heritage sites, and I know they're in a bad condition, but I don't blame, the system for it because we are a developing country and a lot of government's resources are dedicated towards saving people over places. But having said that, we have a beautiful heritage which is, kind of being destroyed in some sense. So we said, how do we build a scalable model for that? And we said, if we do restoration, where we actually take back sites to their original condition, they would be very capital intensive and we'll be able to do very few sites. But if we can find a way to preserve what we have, then we can really scale that up. So we've taken up 2 sites in Bombay. The first one was actually a religious site called Ban Ganga. It's a step-well tank which is dotted by beautiful temples. And when we came into this site, there was encroachments, there wasn't clear access. So we focus, of course, it's all in partnership with government, but we focus on access. So we made sure that there were clearly labeled signage. The road access was there was lights, there was benches, all the basics to make the space accessible. We focused on cleanliness, get the space cleaned up, and then a lot of storytelling. So when I say storytelling, we create heritage walks, we create artistic maps. We even have a children's book, because I have children, and I know the first time I took them to the site, and they were like, "Oh, this is so boring." So I said, it needs to be accessible and enjoyable for all. So at multiple levels, we have an app. We also partner with artists, so we make the site more, attractive to visitors. Another core thing we focus on is driving an economy for the locals, which is based on tourism. Because we realize that a site can only be preserved if the locals have a vested interest.
Okay.
So, our main target audience is the local community. Firstly, we want them to understand the importance of the site. Oftentimes, people live on a site and don't even know that they're in the midst of something so beautiful. So, first is to get them to actually value that this is where they're living. And two is that can we tie an interest with tourism links? So, for example, the people who do our heritage walks are actually locals, so we've trained.
Okay.
So they earn from that. Our second site was Worli Kolivada, which is a much larger project because we had learned from Banganga that we've done a lot more here. And with the Koli culture, it's just a beautiful culture. It's first of all a female forward culture. In this forum would be lovely.
Yeah.
Their women, I always say the Koli woman is a force to reckon with.
That's true.
But all the religious. So the Worli Kolivada is a 4 square kilometer radius area, and there are Hindus, Muslims, Christians, all coexisting so happily. In that little area because they don't identify with their religion, but they identify with being Koli. And of course, the women are, really at the center of a Koli household. In fact, all their deities are actually different from the deities that we, traditionally hear of. And they're all females.
Really?
Yeah. So, in fact, in the Hindu deity is a Golfa Devi goddess, and there is even in the Islamic dargah, they have female deities. So it's quite a beautiful culture and story. So we try to bring that out. Yeah.
You clearly spent a lot of time going on ground, meeting with the community, understanding their needs. I'm sure assessing, prioritizing, how and where to invest, preserve, help with economic development, sustainability. What's the personal experience been like for you?
I love what I do. Yeah, I feel like, and every time we go, we, not only am I learning a lot along the way, but, we find that we can, do such interesting things and, have that ability to kind of look at the big picture and connect the dots. So one of the programs we launched for the Koli women is Chefs of Kolivada. On one of our visits, we found that the food there is really amazing and the women cook great food. So we said, why don't we bring this out? So really the idea is that you can go and eat in a Koli woman's house, and again she'll earn from that, and for a tourist it's such a fabulous experience. So these kind of fun things are great, and we really love what we do. So yeah.
I would love to try one of those meals actually at some point.
Love to take you there sometime. Yeah.
You're also doing a lot when it comes to green cover. Talk to us about that. Planting a lot of coverage across regions. Again, what's the strategy there and what's the plan?
So with the environment, again, we have a strong footprint, and I kind of think of it as 2 areas. One is in the urban space, which actually links up with the heritage project, where we say that while we inherit a cultural heritage, we are also inheriting a natural heritage, which is our forests, our trees. We really focus on biodiversity there. So what we say is that, biodiversity means that you're planting native and building an ecosystem. So if you walk into a forest, you realize that there is a completely different climate. If it's really cold outside, the forest will actually have a warmer climate inside. If it is really hot, you won't be feeling hot inside a forest. that happens because of the way the trees and plants interact with each other, the way the bees, butterflies, every little thing in that forest has a role to play. So we actually say that in Bombay, we're really fortunate that we have Sanjay Gandhi National Park, which is a forest. We've inherited this beautiful natural heritage as a city. We're currently really propagating for a green corridor where we're saying that if we could plant the same native trees which are existing in the park, then you're creating stepping stone habitats for the birds, butterflies, bees to kind of move around the city, which would actually really help. I mean, you would outside your window, rather than seeing pigeons and crows, would start seeing interesting birds and butterflies. And it has a huge environmental impact. It can help clean up the AQI, it can lower the temperatures of the city. So we've taken up 2 parks in Bombay, which we are redoing and showcasing, the whole meaning of biodiversity and bringing our storytelling out with that. We've actually done a long-standing project which is similar in Pune with the Udan Biodiversity Park, which is a 10+ year project. And we have converted a garbage land into a beautiful park. It's in the heart of Pune city, where we brought back extinct birds and butterflies. So we're very proud of that.
Yeah. So, if you had to sort of put it in perspective, rather, you're doing so many different things. In terms of scale, and I know it doesn't matter so much, and in this sphere, everything is meaningful. But to get a sense of perhaps, where more of the focus goes, or in terms of impact, if something has been running for longer and has had more impact already, possibly Pehlay Akshar, how would you articulate that for us?
So I kind of think of all these projects as my babies. And I always say that, like your kids, as they become adults, they become self-sustaining. So Pehlay Akshar to some extent is an adult and has, so requires the least amount of my time because it's got a really good team that's running it. And then the latest project, which is the Green Corridor and also my regenerative agriculture project, which is relatively newer, is taking up a lot more time because they're newer and the teams are, relatively new in that space. So, like I said, it's a journey. Like you have multiple kids, and then each of them is at a different age.
What's the driving force for you? Because you have, you started with education, but you've actually now transversed a multitude of things. It's almost getting to 360 degrees, and you're touching upon some of the key, the key topics that everyone today is concerned about, whether it be sustainability, preservation, of course, climate change. So, how do you choose? Are they more organic projects?
So yes, they're organic. Am I doing too much? Yes. So, but I think, like I was saying earlier, the larger tying philosophy is these are high need areas. And we have kind of come up with innovative ways to look at them.
Okay.
And we're trying to build scalable solutions which can be scaled out. Each of these 3 are independent NGOs. So they are in that journey of kind of started off as incubator projects within the foundation umbrella and are now independent. Having said that, the foundation is also funding other innovative projects with other NGOs. It's not only funding these 3 NGOs. We recently installed artificial reefs in Worli, which is marine biodiversity. Again, that's a very cutting edge, new way of looking at marine biodiversity, has huge environmental impact. So we're also investing. Women is a huge space for us. I mean, as a woman, we have a largely woman team. I always say women is a horizontal for us. It's not a vertical. So in everything we do, whether it's chefs of Kodivara or the teachers, it's largely a woman population. So women is something we greatly focus on. Our women lens has always been financial independence. And we drive that, as a horizontal, but also we invest in a lot of, trainings. We upskill a lot of women in various sectors across all our, locations. We're investing in that too.
Given that you've now been in this space 10, 15 years, you've also clearly would have met a lot of different stakeholders in the ecosystem. Do you see a vision for a different India in the next 5, 6, 10 years?
I definitely see that. I'm very optimistic about, about where we are and, where we are going. I always say that India has a soul, which is amazing. Like, the fact that we have so much, so much difference in wealth, but still our streets are so safe. largely, I would say, in a place like Bombay, you wouldn't, which just goes to say that we have a core to our country which is just so, so spiritually charged that I do believe that we will find a way through it all.
How do you imagine it? In the sense, do you see yourself perhaps looking at broadening perhaps the number of communities you work with, or in even different states, or do you imagine it as really strengthening the foundations of the ecosystem here in Mumbai in the multitude of ways that you're already doing and more?
So, Aabha, I don't think there's a right answer to this, because if you had asked me 5 years ago, I would not be able to predict what I'm doing today.
Sure.
I think my journey's been very organic, and I do believe in that, I'll be guided to doing what's next. And when I'm there, it's going to be instinctive that this is what I need to do or not to do. I do kind of follow my passion. I do what I enjoy, what feels right. And I let that lead the way in that sense.
You also seem to have this innate ability to be very loyal to the mission or the cause, or at least the path that you've chosen. Is that a strength that you have? How would you define yourself? Because there must have been moments when you could have teetered or been like, okay, let the team handle it, I'll take a step back. What keeps you going in those moments?
I have to say I'm passionate. So, sometimes maybe too much. If you ask my family, they think I need to scale back or, do less. But I enjoy what I do. So I don't think of it as work. I do definitely feel like I love my team. We have a great team. So, and we always say that, like, work is fun. We're a lot of women. So oftentimes we come to work and you see people are sick and they're in office. And I'm like, you're sick. They're like, no, I have more peace at work. So, yeah, it's we're enjoying what we're doing, and it's not it doesn't feel like work.
Doesn't feel like work. And what's a day at work like for you?
I won't again say it's structured at all. Of course, there are structured meetings. Typically, everything that happens with the external world is calendared in, but a lot of the internal stuff is very organic. We often just are sitting there and saying, let's go now and let's speak to this person now. Let's go to site now. So, that's the kind of culture where from top to down, everyone's doing everything. Everyone's pitching into each other's work. But yeah, like I said, it's fun and it's organic. Yeah.
They sound almost addictive, right? Yeah. Sounds like there's a high.
It's time for you to join us.
Yeah, I should rephrase that question. Yeah, it should be like, what's the high that you get? What's the secret? Yeah. No, it's amazing to see, because you're doing phenomenal work. I think people are recognizing that, and kudos to you. And you also said that so many people now from the ecosystem, they want to come in and invest in your projects. You also have partnerships that have blossomed.
I don't know so many. I think there could be more.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's at the beginning. But what are the kind of partnerships that are coming up? Just give us some examples, for us to get a sense of the different kinds of innovative things that are happening.
So, with the Heritage Project, Bombay Canteen does something called the Dawat, where they, feed whoever walks in. It's a beautiful project, and I think tomorrow is their 10th year. So they're, giving us the funds and partnering with us in one of the biodiversity parks that we're redoing. So that's interesting. Mask, which is a restaurant in Bombay, has also supported the coolies a lot. They've actually got them into their kitchen. They did a fundraiser for us. They're also planning to promote the women through an actual cookout. So I think on the food front, there are some interesting things happening. On the Heritage Project, we're looking at new sites and what we're offering to anybody who wants to partner with us, which I think is interesting, is that they can pick a site in their neighborhood and THP will kind of be the thought partner. But their money goes directly to site because THP's core team costs are already covered. So we're talking to a few partners on new sites which are in different, and those are interesting partnerships that are coming up. On the environment stuff, with the Regen Agri project, we've been working with cotton farmers over the last 4 years and have built a end-to-end regenerative agriculture project, and are now working on a social enterprise called Artisanry, where we're linking the farmers to global brands. So that's really exciting because we're kind of, working with fabrics and brands and fashion, which is a completely new space.
It's a different world.
Yes.
So you have different kinds of experts that come in for each of these projects that you work with. I mean, how do you gain knowledge when you're doing so many different things?
like you rightfully said, there are experts that get involved, and really that's what makes this space also very interesting because we're constantly meeting new people. I think because we're in the philanthropy space, people are very happy to volunteer their time, which is, I always say, that's the best kind of giving back. More than money, if you give back your time, you're really doing a great service. And we have a lot of people who give their time from the funding companies, which are the RPG companies, and beyond. We have experts who come in and spend time with us, which is great.
What are some of the things that you've learned in your journey so far that you can share with others who may be building something? When they're looking to perhaps have disruptive ideas or create concepts that will take, and grow. What are perhaps some of the learnings that you could share with them in terms of how to identify and then how to build?
So I think one is, if you really believe something is going to work, then I think going in with that positive mindset definitely helps. And then I think, at least with all the work I am doing, you hit a lot of roadblocks. But if you go in with a very fixed mindset, you sometimes get stuck. But if you're open to, kind of adapting, so being agile and adapting what you're doing, that works. Like with Pehlay Akshar, we started with teaching and moved to training. So we were, our target audience was children, and then moved to adults, and then it went digital. So, they're really kind of, if I had said, no, we're only into teaching, then I would have restricted our growth. But, kind of being open to saying that, okay, we need to relook at if there's an opportunity. So kind of keeping the larger vision that we want to make a difference in this space, and if we need to be critical about the way we're doing things and changing that, then we should be. So
Has there been any incident that's taken you by surprise in your work? Something you came up against and you're like, okay, I didn't imagine this would happen.
can't think of a particular incident, but I have to tell you one story, which I won't name the person, but I remember very recently, about a year or so ago, I was talking to somebody from this sector and talking about all the work we're doing, and he is somebody who had worked in the education space and then moved out of it and had this really kind of negative view on education as a space. I do understand that, because education as a space is a very difficult space to move the needle in. You're up against too many odds in that sense, and anybody who's in that space understands it. You also get lost. Your impact is kind of lost in. So he was like, all this work you're doing, for years and years together, but really, what have you really done? Where is the impact visible?
I asked you the impact question earlier as well. You must have wanted to like shoot me. Like
No. I think it's a very fair question, but it's very difficult to always bring a number forward. A lot of these things are like that stone you throw into the river and the ripple is there. But how do you really capture that ripple? So, my comeback to him was that, yes, it's a difficult space, but at least I'm trying. And even if I move the needle a little bit, it's better than not moving it and sitting out there and saying, oh, the system is broken. So I think that's the approach where you kind of, you kind of go at.
I admire your tenacity. I have to say, I sat down and I was like this sweet lady, and it takes a lot of grit to do what you're doing. And I think, I don't know if you've ever been underestimated. But
Haven't we all been?
I love. So, I think, people may think that may not take someone as seriously when they perceive them to be maybe soft or, from privilege, and not realize that they have the gumption to stick it through and ensure they get what they want. So that's what
I view it as a plus now, as over time, because I'm like, great, I'll sit there and pretend like I don't know anything, but when I need to, you will know. So, huh.
I love that. On the education piece, and while, every now and then I do come across, different initiatives that are looking to bridge that gap. You're right. I think sometimes there is no other way to measure it. You normally hear, okay, X number of schools or students or regions or towns or some way to put a number to it. But I'm not sure if that is the correct way to assess the actual impact that it has had, and I'm not sure what that is actually, because at the end of the day, I don't know if it's how many people graduate or then get jobs, or where do you start to measure the impact of some of these initiatives collectively.
Actually, I have a view on impact studies. And of course, Pehlay Akshar is impact evaluated, and we've done it multiple times, and we have these reports with flying colors to show. But do I believe in them? No. We do them for funders, to be honest, because like you said, funders want that to show that this has worked. But the whole relationship, if I, as the founder of Pehlay Akshar, am going to give someone money to come and evaluate my program, the funding relationship doesn't add up. You are going to come and tell me my program is great. So I think there is a fundamental flaw in that. A lot of these companies which come and do the evaluations are really expensive. They hire interns who come in and evaluate your program. I don't think they're competent enough. But I do believe in impact assessments. And like I said, for us, our funders go out and evaluate, which I think is far more effective.
Super interesting. Yeah.
And I always say the best way to know you're making an impact is go yourself. You know, people sit in a room with PowerPoint presentations and want to see numbers. But if you're investing somewhere, go and just interact with the people on the ground. You get to know so much by just that physical interaction, which is far more informative than an impact report.
Radha, in terms of your other interests, you're also an avid writer. Of course, you studied media communications, and now I think you do that on the side as a hobby. But I've read some of your articles for things like Indian Express and otherwise, and they're fantastic. What are some of your most, some of the topics that you're most passionate or keen to write about? I've seen articles on leadership, travel, gender, lots of different things.
I love writing, and I don't get enough time to write, but I mean, if I had more time, I would write every week if I could. The topics are just random, I would say, because like I was mentioning earlier, I meet so many interesting people in the work that I'm doing that I'm privileged enough to be exposed to a lot. That you just sometimes get inspired by things. You stand up with that bird's eye view, able to connect dots, which I'm glad people find interesting. I have to say, I don't always, I wonder who's reading the articles. I'm glad you are reading them, but yeah.
What is one of the more interesting things perhaps you've heard or seen in recent soirees or just happening around us in the in the economic or political landscape?
I think this whole biodiversity thing right now has really been on my mind because it's such a simple solution. We're all struggling with, AQI issues, and it's so simple. So I was mentioning to you earlier also that, just doing biodiversity planting, when we say that, it means putting native trees, which we are not. It's such a simple thing to do. If you are in a certain region and you could, in your building or in your, lobby for it in the government air parks around you, get native trees to be planted. You can solve for a lot of our environment problems. In fact, Medellin, the city in Colombia, did a similar intervention, and they managed to drop temperatures on the city by 2 degrees. So there is a case study here too that's proven that this works.
We should all be doing it. We've all been destroyed this summer. So look what's happening around the world. It's not a laughing matter. I'm just saying it out of angst, but we're clearly seeing the signs.
Yeah, and it's such a small step, even if it is your house garden or it's your neighborhood, and if you could just encourage native planting, it could make so much of a difference.
Radha, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great speaking with you and having you with us here on the show.
Thank you, Aabha. This is lovely.